borrow money without asking anyone. So if I wanted to borrow money from a bank, then I have to fill out forms, maybe get on a phone calls or whatever. But through Aave, I can just borrow assets. And money markets allow for very, very different various yield strategies. A simple one is like, let's say, Bitcoin. It's really hard to earn Bitcoin right now, or earn yield on Bitcoin now. So you can borrow stablecoins and then maybe pay 2% to borrow stablecoins and earn 8% through DeFi protocols. So those are various DeFi strategies. And yeah, I think a lot of people are attracted to DeFi because of those high yields. And obviously those yields have gone down because most yield is paid out in the native token. So on the way up, the fundamentals of DeFi, totally amazing, right? It's like, oh my God, like DeFi is the best thing ever. On the way down, fundamentals suck because the yields suck. But you can find value in protocols that are actually creating value, generating revenue. And I think that's where the most of the opportunities are right now.
I think like adding on what is DeFi, and maybe I'll introduce myself because I think we only went one by one. I'm Dreamer, president at Kingdom Studios. We develop DeFi kingdoms. I have about 10 years in traditional banking, investment banking. And so I was a part of one of the larger institutions I won't name, I guess, on this stage. And I saw how we've been doing banking and finance the same way for a very long time. Every bit of innovation wasn't necessarily to help the broad population, but to cater to and service the broad population, but help a very small centralized group. So one of the main things that drew me away from that life to this life was the dream of sharing the love, sharing the innovation, and advancing on that utility in terms of decentralized services like DeFi, decentralized finance. So what else can you do? I think there are many protocols out there looking to solve for lending, looking to solve for financial assets and derivatives. It's a very hard thing to do. However, with smart contracts and technology we have, it's very possible, and it's been ignored for a really long time. So in the future, if DeFi were to continue to get support and evolve, and many things really have to happen in order to have that mass adoption, I could see all of the services that you can imagine through traditional banks, through investment banks and others being offered through the blockchain, through DeFi, which if you think about all the money that is backing many of the services there, converting to blockchain-based services, the potential there is unlimited in terms of what farmers or investors or participants could benefit from.
Yeah, we got our fourth panelist. It's a surprise panelist, Jazir.
Howdy.
Well, we just started and we're kind of just going through what is DeFi, and we had two weigh in. If you want to weigh in, and Grant kind of weigh in with how you would describe DeFi or what it is. Just very basic right now.
Yeah, look, I think DeFi is a really great way for people to get access to promising projects that otherwise would take until essentially IPO to become accessible for public investors. So you see a lot of volatility in the upward and downward direction. But if you look at the way that equities performed in the 80s and 90s, like there was a lot more gains to be made. Ultimately, it's because you could access these assets that represented like real value accrual. And I think DeFi is the first sort of asset class we've seen in decades that allows the common person to see some of these gains that have been otherwise kept for the private markets.
And to add on to that a little bit, I'm Grant, by the way. I work at CADEX. It's a decentralized exchange on Kadena. DeFi also really pushes forward this idea of like self-sovereignty and being able to like reclaim, what you're doing with your finances and your data, and cutting out sort of like traditional finance and stopping, or not stopping, but working to really move away from this like middleman mentality where you're lending out money to a bank to essentially only receive like a very small slice of the pie. And DeFi is one of the first exercises in actually being able to claim that whole slice for yourself based on the assets like you provide and you choose to act with.
So like if we expanded on that, even just trading assets from one account to another, traditionally you have to put in the request. Somebody has to review it. Somebody's got to click a button to accept it. You're waiting hours for confirmation, then days for settlement. Just to move money, it's a whole headache. And you're probably paying dozens, if not hundreds of people in that process.
And it's to move money that you already own, that like it's your funds. You should be able to decide what to do with them, how they move, and everything there. So
But if I know your wallet and I have money to give you, I send it to you, and as fast as the blockchain can service it, you have it. So that's one way. All of the money that is being paid to service that traditionally can now be shared, right? It's not being consumed. When you think about lending, to go through a whole, underwriting process and have it be limited by a centralized group to say how much you can or cannot receive, it may or may not be related to the actual risk of the lending. It's related to your history, it's related to the institution and the underlying assets. But many like algorithmically driven or decentralized lending protocols are solving for that in a completely different way. So when you say removing the middleman, I think in something as simple as moving assets or borrowing money, you really are simplifying it with technology that could end up being much more reliable in the end.
also, like traditional lending doesn't take into account a person's, their home life, the circumstances they've grown up in, and it's really not an equitable system. It doesn't look to assess how that person has, like what has impacted them or affected them in their life to maybe enable them or prevent them from gaining access to loans or other financial tools. So DeFi really just says like, okay, like what can you do on chain with the assets you have on chain? Like it's all you. Like do what you want.
Yeah, and most loans in DeFi are over collateralized because you're lending money to people that like you don't really know, right? So you have to deposit $10,000 worth of Bitcoin if you want to borrow, let's say $5,000 worth of stable coins. But I think in the future, I think DeFi isn't dead, but it's just really new, and there has to be more innovation. And I know Vitalik wrote this paper recently called like soulbound tokens. It's kind of like building an on-chain credit score. So of course, if you're lending to a new wallet with like no transaction history, then yeah, maybe that person has to deposit X dollars of collateral to borrow Y dollars worth of stable coins and whatnot. But if I have thousands of transactions on chain on my wallet, then maybe I have a credit score, a certain credit score, where I can take on under collateralized loans. I think those types of products have to be built out in order for DeFi to really serve the masses, because right now most DeFi products are only made for people that actually have money, just because transaction fees on Ethereum are very high, and there are alternative L1s that do offer lower fees, but I think most people are attracted to DeFi for the gains, and right now the gains are hard to be had because the market is down. But if you can see through the noise and actually look for products that are generating value, then I think those are products that you should farm, tokens that you should farm, and yeah, I think that's the best way to navigate the markets right now.
Yeah, I actually personally had the problem, the access to financial tools. I couldn't get a mortgage. My bank told me I could. I went through the process and they said, oh no, you're self-employed. You need 2 years income returned. I don't know. I ended up not being able to get a mortgage, and that has definitely put me on to DeFi, giving these options to kind of blindly, to anyone, very equal. I dig it. You touched on it a little bit. This can be our second topic. So is DeFi dead, or are we just trimming the fat? What do you guys think?
There's no way DeFi is dead. I mean, there's still 150 billion in TVL across all assets or all platforms. I do, however, think this is a bit of a reckoning. I remember for SIFchain when we raised, we started in I think August of 2020, and our pitch slide said like 5 billion in TVL and then 10 billion and 15. I mean, to keep updating it as we were raising. So this is the first time that that number has started sliding down. And it's also the first time that people are seeing what are otherwise DeFi stalwarts kind of not being as impactful either in terms of revenue or token price. But it does seem like this industry cycles every 2 to 3 years in terms of what the top names are. And if you thought you had alpha and you registered for a few programs or whatever, it's time for you to either reevaluate or cycle to potentially a new set of assets or new chains or new whatever. But no, DeFi is here to stay.
Yeah, I think like in order to answer that question, you have to look at the driver. So we know what the environment is today. We see the prices, we see the APYs, we see how things have adjusted, but what's caused this? Is it an idiosyncratic driver related only to crypto and DeFi? Or is it something much bigger and what we are seeing is more of a like a byproduct? You look at the macroeconomic landscape, you look at regulation, you look at you know COVID and everything that's happening there. You look at inflation, unemployment rate, you follow the stock market, and you start seeing correlations with Bitcoin and low cap tech stocks. And if we see how all of that is performing in the world, we follow the fear greed index and see that we're at extreme fear. This is not unique to crypto, but we're feeling the pains even more. If you think of a traditional large cap stock, is down 5%, and then you look at the tech sector, then you look at small cap tech, and then you look at Bitcoin, and then you look at altcoins, there is correlation. And I don't think that there's any driver that has hinted that the innovation move of DeFi is anywhere near dead. It is a very, very strong test. And we've seen like a Lehman Brothers-like event in the last month, and I won't name what, but what happened with traditional finance when that happened? What happened after 2008? People learned, people innovated, people adjusted, regulation adjusted, and then we got a stronger, better system, depending on your own view. As a result, I think that's going to be very similar with decentralized finance. We have to improve our risk management. We have to find ways to adjust so that maybe we aren't as linked to the whole world, but currently we are.
Yeah, you
You wanna
brought up
weigh
a
in?
really good point about correlation. I feel like crypto historically has been uncorrelated with traditional asset classes. But as this most recent, maybe 2020 to 2022 rise has come about, we've seen a lot of traditional capital entering, but treating it like it is another fintech project or another startup. And it would be good to see DeFi products, number one, try to diversify more, look at things like commodities, look at things like, novel sort of crypto economic value generators that won't exist in fintech to become more uncorrelated. But then I think at the same time, understanding these markets requires more sophistication than just put your money here and farm. I like to often tell people, most dexes earn their yield through liquidity mining. And that's an interesting space, but like it's not trade volume. Understanding differences like that and knowing sort of where's the yield coming from so that you are not yourself the yield, I think that's going to kind of cut out some investors and then bring in new investors that have a deeper sophistication.
Yeah, I think just to expand on that, the type of tokens that are available, I mean, you mentioned commodities. If we think about traditional assets, assets flow from one type of, asset to another, right? You have equity that is representing a higher volatility, therefore a higher return than your traditional bonds. You have commodities like gold that people see as a safe haven asset. You have different currencies that follow what governments are doing, if the overall inflation relative to GDP and unemployment. But we don't have as much of that dynamic in DeFi, in crypto yet, but we can. We have the ability to. I think when I was working at the bank, I was actually onboarding large institutional hedge funds to trade Bitcoin-based futures. And when we started that whole due diligence process, the number one reason they wanted to is because they saw crypto as a safe haven asset. That would hint that it isn't highly correlated with equities. And people were looking to run to crypto when things were in trouble with fiat currencies, equities, and other. But as we pointed out in the last year to two, it's actually shifted to be very different. So back to the question, what innovation needs to occur, what adjustments need to be made to have it be more decentralized, more detached, more unpegged from traditional assets?
Yeah, and one thing that's really hard is like how to value these crypto tokens, because I know some funds try to use traditional finance methods to value projects based on cash flow, but you can't really do that because let's say there's a like price to earnings ratio of 10, but what percentage of those earnings are subsidized by token emissions, and most of the times like like projects are emitting more tokens than they're actually taking in revenue. So just because people have a really hard time valuing tokens, like I do this full time, and I can't even value these tokens, right? I'm just kind of guessing at this point. So when people don't know how to value tokens, then on the risk spectrum, when people want to take a risk off, people will just like dump the DeFi tokens first. And I think that's what's contributing to like this negative sentiment in DeFi of like, oh, is farming dead? Farming doesn't work anymore. But I beg to differ. I think there are lots of opportunities via farming, but you have to look a lot harder now than like, let's say 6 months ago.
I think that's important. I don't know how many people might be unfamiliar with farming, but essentially the reward you're getting is that token. So being able to value the project the token represents is super important. I know you joked you're kind of guessing, but what do you do? What has been successful to value? You might look at a nice APY, you might see a community, but where do you get scared, or where do you get more comfortable with a project or an overall token?
Yeah, I think it comes down to like product market fit. If you're launching a fork of something that already exists on 5 chains, I'm less inclined to check out that project. But like when I discovered DeFi Kingdoms, I was like, oh, it's like pretty new, it's pretty innovative. So I would nibbled with it, right? I allocate like small percent of the portfolio. And one project I really like right now is I don't mean to shill this thing, but I'm just giving an example of like GMX. It's a perpetual trading protocol, and it's actually like making money. You can actually track how much money is the protocol making, like how many fees it's generating. So I think actual metrics matter a lot more now, because in a bull market, like people will just buy things that are going up, and it's like kind of fun. It's like it's kind of fun. But in these moments, you really have to figure out, okay, like does this team have like actual like money in their treasury? I know a lot of a lot of projects that like ran out of money because they never diversified their treasury in the bull market. So a lot of projects are either rugging or just like leaving outright. So what I look for is, does the team have at least 1 year in runway? Where's the like money coming from? Like what's the TVL, and like what is the trend, right? Like is it built on a particular L1? Does it have product market fit? Things like that like matter a lot, especially because I'm risking my own capital, right? Staking it in these protocols, earning these tokens. So I really have to feel safe about like will this team rug or something like that.
I really hear what you're saying about or empathize with what you're saying about like the treasury aspect of things. But on top of that, you also need to say like, okay, well, is there a treasury, and is there a DAO that's effectively managing that treasury? Having a treasury that's just sitting there with like $30 million in it that people are, like, and that's like the shilling point of the project, where it's like, oh, we have this like huge treasury, and it's like, this is what the protocol is all about, is doing cool treasury stuff, investing in other projects. But are the people who are operating that treasury informed with what they're doing, and how they're actually deploying those assets? That needs to really be taken into account as well, because like the underlying like fundamentals of the project could be sound, but as soon as you start to like decentralize and have the treasury be run by a DAO, I think that needs to be highly scrutinized as well. You need to really make sure that the projects you're investing in like are effectively managed at all levels.
Yeah, and I saw like a governance proposal today and yesterday of like DAOs like running out of money. So there's like a proposal for Lido to sell like 10,000 ETH in their treasury, so they can have 2 years runway to pay 50 people. And I think Tribe, Fei, they had a proposal to like sell off like a bunch of governance tokens that they hold, other project governance tokens, like not, yeah. So, I think most devs are working on their project and they're like less concerned with, I guess, like treasury management. But when prices start going down, it's like, oh, it's like everyone looks around, it's like, oh wait, like we kind of need money. So,
Yeah, for sure.
and that adds extra sell pressure across the board. And one day it'll turn around. I don't know when that time is. We're all, like no one knows. No one has a crystal ball. But in the meantime, I just think it's best to hold assets you have conviction in. And if there's ways to earn organic yield, that's like the best way to go about it. Nice.
Nice.
Nice, very nice. So what needs to come next in DeFi? We touched on it a little bit, but what needs to be built? What is the future? What do you guys see?
I think, I said a few times innovation, and I don't want to like overuse that or like oversimplify it either, because it's hard to think of something new that will work, that people will like, that they'll put their money at risk for. So you can't just sit around and be like, why aren't anybody innovating? Because everybody's trying. It's just you see 90% of what's worked, and maybe you try 10% to do something different. One thing that DeFi Kingdoms, I think, has been recognized for doing something different is taking DeFi, something as simple as a DEX, making it look and feel like a game, so that people don't understand, people who do not understand like the fundamentals of DeFi, liquidity farming, staking LP tokens, can start to understand it with simple things like, okay, it's not a DEX, it's a garden, and you don't have to stake a token. You plant seeds, and the plant seeds grow fruit. That starts identifying a little bit of innovation, but also lowering barrier to entry. It makes it a little bit easier to understand. So you can do that through education. I know Coinbase Wallet is looking at not only onboarding a lot of users, but giving you access to what things are. I think a lot of people hop in the Discord and Telegram and just get destroyed and run away because it's the wild, wild west. So definitely better on-ramps, better education, and I would say better user experience, whether that's through gamification, whether that's through making it simpler to use or understand, or protecting people to not get ripped off, rugged, or tricked. It's a big one.
Just like this idea of like abstracting away these complexities is absolutely the next step that like DeFi and I think crypto as a whole is going to be moving towards. The traditional way to like tell people about projects. I remember when I was like getting started doing stuff in crypto, everyone would just be like, oh, like read this white paper or read this like very highly complex technical article, which like, sure, cool. Totally doable, but for most people, I would say that that's just not necessarily that achievable of a thing. Like, not everyone is doing crypto or doing DeFi full time. So for these people to come in and then be sort of like force fed like hyper technical concepts and have either the expectation is that they have like a CS or econ background or something like that is just going to turn off a lot of people. So this idea, like what DeFi Kingdoms is doing, where you're essentially like taking a DEX and turning it into something like very highly palatable and also enjoyable to use, amazing. It's just incredible, and that's absolutely the next step for DeFi and for crypto.
And if we think of traditional banking again, how did that work? Were they going around saying what they're doing in the background? Well, no, maybe that was one of the bad parts of it, but they made it very clear what they're selling. I think we need real world application. We need more real world application so that people can say, I need a loan. Should I go to my bank? Or should I go on the blockchain? I want a credit card. I want to buy an option. Should I go to a traditional broker, or should I find something on the blockchain? And I don't think we have that mass understanding of the availability, the how you even onboard, where you go from there, how you offboard. And that's going to really set the stage, I think, in the next phase of DeFi.
Yeah, I think two things that come to mind for me. One would be education. So I know, hey, look, like this is complicated math or it's complicated engineering. It's nice to make things simple, but the innovation's happening ultimately at the tech and econ side. And I think if you want to understand risk, it's important that either you do get the serious background or at least you find an educator who can explain it to you. We all do know this after things like a Terra crash or these various other platforms that have risk, like just because they explain it well or there's a lot of evangelization doesn't mean that like it's safe for people to necessarily put capital behind them. And I think the other side is more on the sort of legal slash organizational bit. I know as you guys are talking about like, hey, how do DAOs manage treasuries and so on. I feel like we have this mix of these like companies essentially that have all this ridiculous red tape to try and stay in DeFi, and you have these people who are just anonymous. You have no idea what they're doing, kind of voting on whatever. Ideally, there would be a little bit more trust and flexibility to kind of merge those two worlds. And I think that's really where like legal, like, you know, people like LexPunk or whatever, like, or the groups I should say, like LexPunk, like that's where they innovate. And it's kind of necessary so you can have, you know, the quality of corporate governance with the, let's say, ingenuity of DeFi.
Definitely. That's like another amazing point. I mean, there needs to be this delineation between like the actual like structure behind the DAO, like from the legal side, and then like a software engineering company. It becomes like a major issue when like let's say there's like a US based software engineering company that's offering the project, like, and they also are dealing with like token issuance. That gets into like having to deal with securities and securities law. And if you're a US-based company that's issuing a token, there's just so much more you have to do there. So you can actually like transfer ownership to another entity to actually deal with the token and have that be a legal representation of the DAO. That removes a lot of the risk for, you know, one, the company itself, but also it enables the holders to have like true governance power over that legal entity. And this is what we're starting to do at CADX, where we have this, you know, bifurcated legal structure where we have like our US-based engineering company, you know, a association that handles the DAO and token issuance, and then basically all of the funds in the treasury. And that actually, I think, is improving a lot of how like we're moving forward as an organization and what we're able to accomplish. It gives us a much clearer path on like what we can and can't do. It eases the load for us in many ways. So.
We are out of time. I think we have enough time if we want to just real quick go down the line and tell everybody who you are and where they can find you, and we'll get off the stage before they pull us off.
I'm Taiki. I run a DeFi farming channel on YouTube, so you can just look up my name, and you know you'll see a bunch of Pepe Farmer frogs, and you know I make those thumbnails.
I'm Grant Kerber. I'm the Chief Governance Officer for CADX. You can find me on Twitter at KDXFrogman.
Dreamer, president at Kingdom Studios, developing DeFi Kingdoms. Twitter is DreamerDFK, or just go to DeFiKingdoms.com.
Hi, I'm Jazir from SifChain. You can check us out on Twitter at SifChain, SIFCHAIN.
Right on. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for everything. I learned a lot. Hopefully everyone out there did too.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's so great to hear about onboarding initiatives and making this a more attractive idea, right? Because DeFi, finance in general, because we're not taught it generally in our education system in order to empower us, right? Because we're not taught it, it can seem kind of scary or kind of out there somewhere, right? So hearing about new initiatives on how to onboard and how to make it less aggressive, right, is so important for this industry. And so it's great to have a panel up there of gentlemen talking about just that. DeFi, DeFi, DeFi. But now we move on, right? There's a new and interesting way in which NFTs are integrating into gaming, right? How do you not only benefit from the ownership of what I call an NFT, the tokenization of a unique digital asset? How do you not only benefit from that, but how do you benefit from playing actual games, blockchain-based games? Actually, some South American countries, people are playing blockchain-based games and earning more income than they would in traditional jobs. So play-to-earn gaming is not just playing games, but it's actually creating an economy of jobs that allow people to have sovereignty and allow people to have ownership of those tokens that they can convert back to their fiat currency if need be. Really interesting stuff coming up in terms of NFTs and play-to-earn gamings, and that's why I'm so excited to introduce our next speaker from Splinterlands. Representing Splinterlands, we have John Monahan. Please welcome him to the stage.
What's up, everybody? Make sure I can see my slides here. All right, so I'm John Monahan. I'm with Splinterlands, VP of Sales, here to talk about a little bit of play and earn gaming today. 10 minutes is not enough time to have you walk out of here knowing everything there is to know about Splinterlands. However, it is enough time to scratch the surface a little bit, and hopefully you're interested enough to come over and talk with us at our booth. We'll be here all day today and tomorrow. Quick disclaimer, this is not meant to be financial and or legal advice. Do your own research. So what's Splinterlands, right? It's kind of the confluence of gaming and blockchain technology. What makes us, among many things, a little bit unique is that we've been around for 4 years already. 4 years is a long time in this space. It also implies that we've been through a couple bear markets before. But we've been doing this for a long time. We've figured it out. We've learned a lot of lessons, and we're quite successful at this point. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the stats here in a minute, but the basic idea is that you are building a card collection, a lot like Magic the Gathering, some of the other card collecting games you've had out there. The difference is the cards themselves are cards that you own on the blockchain. And so you're building out a card collection and you are battling against opponents, player versus player style, using a selection of your cards from your deck to satisfy the rules and conditions for each particular battle. So battle lasts about 2 to 4 minutes, and you are given a randomly generated set of rules and conditions and a timer. And within that time limit, you have to pick a subset of your cards that you think are going to be successful strategy to beat your opponent. And that's the basics of it. There's a lot more to it. I've heard it described as an easy game to learn, a very difficult game to master. And I can honestly say that I'm quite addicted myself. But there's a lot of reach here, right? I mean, 2 million plus registered users, 900,000 plus unique active wallets, over 400,000 daily active users. That goes up and down, 350 to 500,000. But over 2 billion battles have taken place in Splinterlands over our 4 years. 3 to 5 million transactions per day on chain, 146 countries, 10 plus languages, 1,000 plus guilds. You know, we do have some credibility behind us. And of course, we're #1 on DApp Radar, right? So this is among all decentralized applications, not just gaming. So you can kind of see the prevalence of gaming in this phase of Web3 that we're in. It's a really great, easy way to onboard from Web2 to Web3. Why is that? Because it's fun. So part of what we do that makes us successful, the game itself is a lot of fun, and the entertainment value has to be there. But the economy also has to be there as well. The earning has to be good. So we have a pretty diverse ecosystem. So there's a handful of tokens and a handful of NFTs that you're going to find in the system. Dark energy crystals are the in-game token, the deck, right? So you earn those by battling and doing a lot of the in-game transactions. SPS, or Splinter Shards, that's our governance token. That's on Binance Smart Chain. And then we have vouchers that are airdropped for displaying specific behaviors in the game. For example, like staking SPS tokens. And then the NFTs are actually what are central to gameplay, right? So the cards, I talked about how we build the card collection, or you build the card collection of cards that you own. And all of those cards are NFTs. And they all have these unique abilities and characteristics to them that you can use for gameplay. The packs that the cards come in, also NFTs, right? So when you buy a card pack, you have the choice to open it, and many people do. I can't help myself. I always open all mine. But the packs can be traded on the open market as well. So you can hold on to packs, and historically, they have appreciated in value quite a bit, as have the cards. Validator node licenses. So we are moving more and more decentralized all the time. The validator nodes are for our SPS, our governance token. And we just went into a pre-sale, was it last week or the week before, for our validator node licenses. Sold out in 10 minutes. So we're into a public sale now. Those are available. And you can actually, just by owning node licenses, I think we're announcing today that we're going to start the voucher airdrops for those who hold node licenses. There's also going to be SPS tokens that you'll get airdrop to you for having node licenses as well. And then later this year, we'll actually launch the node software so that you can start validating blocks. But these all produce interesting ways to earn and participate in the economy, the meta, the game behind the game in Splinterlands, right? And then we did do a land sale last year. Those are also NFTs. And later this year, we're going to do a land expansion. So land expansion will begin to add functionality to the land that we've already sold. Land expansion will allow you to do things like mint items and spells. Items and spells will also be NFTs. They will be NFTs that you can only get by minting them on your own land or buying them from other players who have minted on their land. That's not something that we actually sell. So how do you earn in Splinterlands? Well, there's a number of different ways, right? So just by playing the game, you're going to earn a lot. You heard right before I walked on stage, there are people in other countries that use this as their primary source of income. Of course, with the markets the way they are, this can fluctuate up and down in terms of, the actual token prices. However, just by playing the game, no matter what, you're going to be earning. You can also earn through scholarship to guilds. We'll talk about guilds in just a moment. And the card market, right? So there's a number of different card markets. There's one in the game, and then our community has produced a number of card markets that surround the game as well. But you can buy and sell cards to each other as players in any of these markets. You can also rent cards, so it produces a nice way to earn. But you can also earn by participating in the economy around the game. So whether you're staking SPS tokens, participating in liquidity pools, you're getting airdrops for different types of behaviors in the game, or operating nodes, which is going to come out a little bit later this year, it just produces a number of different ways that you can actually earn and also see a lot of asset appreciation value as well. I mean, we're on our 7th edition of cards right now. And if you look at the prices of cards that came out of what were $2 card packs once upon a time, and you're seeing cards that are worth, tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars at this point. So the asset appreciation is really nice as well. But the big thing that we hinge everything on, where all the value comes from, is scarcity, sort of this combination of scarcity and utility. So the NFTs have to have utility. The entertainment value of the game has to be there. So the intrinsic value of playing the game has to be good, independent of what you're earning, how much you're earning, and those types of things. That's how we've been around for 4 years. That's how we've built a massive, strong community that we have of enthusiastic players that like to play the game. And making sure that the resources are scarce kind of keeps the economy of the game going as well, right? So, for example, we have 15 million card packs in the current Chaos Legion edition. We've sold about 8.5 million of those. So we sort of inflate the market with the release of an edition of card packs. But as people buy the packs, they open up the packs. In order to level up the characters, you have to combine cards. You're starting to burn a lot of them from supply. So we kind of create that scarcity. And once we sell out of the packs, the only place to buy those is from other players. So we exist. One of our main goal, maybe our main goal, is to onboard as many people from Web 2 to Web 3 as we possibly can. And I think a lot of people here are very interested in doing that as well. Gaming is a fun way to make that happen, and it also reduces a lot of the friction. So just inherently, gaming will reduce a lot of the friction. However, we also try to do some little things in the game, and we have more coming in this vein. But when you sign up for an account, you have to buy a spell book for $10 to sort of unlock the features of the game. What you may or may not know when you buy that spell book for $10 is that you just created a wallet, and all of your gaming that takes place going forward is now on chain. Guilds are a really important part of what we do. It's really, 400,000 daily active users is massive for Web 3 right now, but it's a grain of sand on the beach compared to Web 2 projects, right? And so one of the best ways that we can continue to bolster the economy around the game and grow an enthusiastic community is to bring groups in that are going to make larger, more centralized purchases. So gaming guilds will, play-to-earn gaming guilds at least, they will come into a game, they'll buy a lot of assets for a lot of money, and then they will delegate those assets out to scholars who are actual gamers that want to play the game, and then they revenue share on whatever the scholars make on those assets. So guilds are really important to us. That's actually a big part of what I do. There's a lot of NFT investors that want to consider creating gaming guilds. There's a lot of established gaming guilds out there. We have a number of them in the game already, but always hoping that we find some more. The community is really strong. The community is why we are where we are. It's really important that we continue to grow that community, but you don't stick around for 4 years without a really strong community base. And we have been very blessed to have that. All right, trying to keep us on time here. We've done a number of different partnerships, but if you have questions, come to the booth. I'd love to talk with you. I'll be here for the, at the booth for today and tomorrow, but I know many of you are probably sticking around for Consensus as well. I don't have a booth for Consensus. I'd love to find some time to meet up and have individual conversations as well. There's my contact info, so thank you very much. Almost made it.
As I mentioned before, there are amazing innovations coming through guilds, coming through the marriage between NFTs and play-to-earn gaming. So it was nice to hear that and nice to have an example of what it actually looks like in the digital form. That being said, Web3 gives everyone an opportunity to dream and think big and broad, correct? There is new ways of thinking about how we can have not only financial sovereignty, but ownership. Not only just ownership, but new ways to envision how we interact with the world around us and what the world around us even means. Currently, a fun statistic that is very, very relevant. Meta, formerly known as Facebook, has 3.6 billion active monthly users across all its platforms. Web2 company at its finest. Some people are trying to get billions of people into Web3, but how do you do that? What is the mechanism to allow people to seamlessly onboard into this Web3 experience? Well, it is my great pleasure to introduce a representative from NFT Pay, Mr. Michael Kralivsky, to explain us just that. Put your hands together.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's get some energy and some fire in the house. Decentral Austin, how's it going? So, yes, give it up louder. Come on. All right. Happy to be here. So we're talking about a really fun topic today, how to impact 1 billion people. Right here's a little bit about my background. So built a couple businesses, pioneered some early NFT technology in 2016, then came up with a very interesting company called NFT Pay. And we think we're going to impact 1 billion people with this, and I can't wait to explain how. Some other cool accolades there. So firstly, how many people are in the world? There's about 7.8 billion. Who has impacted 1 billion people so far, or what? 1.2 billion vehicles in the world, 2.7 trillion passengers on railways, trains, 3.5 billion passengers have flown on airplanes, 13.3 billion pages of textual records in national archives in the US, 2.8 billion credit card holders in the worldwide. However, blockchain is in its infancy. You know, what's the difference between all those numbers and this? Well, only 3.9% of the world, this is the highest statistic I could find. There's actually been other ones that say less than 1%, have a crypto wallet. 300 million people, that's it. So how do we impact 1 billion people with NFTs? Steve Jobs once said, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. We think this is one of the keys to bringing 1 billion plus people into NFTs. So again, 3.9% holds crypto wallets. 41 billion was done last year in the NFT market, and 84% of users, even crypto holders, still want to pay with a credit card. And if you're a crypto holder, you can probably imagine why. You have your crypto, you're mainly using it as an investment, and you kind of want to just use your credit card. So how big can this be? So we did a very conservative chart where we analyzed every report we can find. and found that conservatively by 2025, NFT market will be $1 trillion. I think it's going to be in the tens of trillions in 8 to 10 years. What are the problems with getting into NFTs? Well, you have the crypto wallet requirement, you have cryptocurrency requirements, and you have these crazy, arduous KYC processes. You know, some of you probably used some of these processes and like gave up on a purchase of an NFT or got really frustrated and then your credit card didn't work. So we solved all this. We figure, hey, if we give you a normal buying process like you do on any one of your favorite websites, you're gonna buy. And so far it's been true. On the left is what exists. On the right is what NFT Pay brings to market. So we have 3 simple steps. I don't know if this video is gonna work or not. No, we didn't get to test that. But here's the team that's doing it. You know, we all have multiple exits, including billion-dollar exits here on our team. Got into the top B2B enterprise accelerator. Have some of the best advisories in the world on our board. And we're NFT Pay. Lightning fast credit card solutions for NFTs. And to expand on this, we think the key to impacting 1 billion people in this space is to provide familiar and simple solutions to things people want to do. And we're just focusing on one small sector. We know that blockchain is absolutely humongous and going to touch pretty much every aspect of business and life in the future. But we want to be an example, a representative for every company out there that's building and say, hey, listen, we just can't be a bunch of blockchain crypto nerds, no matter how smart we are, and not care about what the rest of the world does or how they act and how they buy things. We have to think deeply about their existing processes and how to bridge that gap. We can do all the nerdy, technological, very deep, hard stuff on the back end, but on the front end, it's really important to give something someone familiar. So I wanted to make it short and sweet, catch Decentral up on time, and leave it open for a couple of questions. So there we go, NFT Pay. Here's a couple appendix slides that, you know, if anyone wants these slides after, I can show you some good stuff. But any questions? Audience? Who else here is impacting 1 billion people? Anyone? Any company want to shout out? What?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question for sure. So when people are trying to buy NFTs, it's like, okay, I have to get this crypto, I have to do this, I don't even know where to go. So can you just talk a little bit about, like, I'm Bianca Starr, woo woo, and I want to buy an NFT. So how do I do it with NFT Pay?
Yeah, so right now, the current process mostly is that a person has to go get a crypto wallet.
Okay.
And that can be like pretty scary. Like even MetaMask, the #1 wallet solution, like you have to get this, you know, 16, 12 word passphrase. They say several times, if you lose it, you're gonna lose all your cryptocurrency, all your money. They scare you to death. And people are like, what the hell is this thing? You know, they're used to regular passwords. And so that's the first step barrier, which most of us in this room have overcome. But then you got to go on a crypto exchange and buy cryptocurrency. But before you do that, you have to find the crypto exchange. You're like, okay, I've heard of Coinbase. I'll go to Coinbase. And then they ask you for 1,000,001 documents. And you have to upload everything, like your driver's license, your bank account information. And then finally, you can start sending money to them. And so now you're sending money to this random exchange you've never, you know, really played with. And it takes time. And then you got to go buy cryptocurrency. So now you all of a sudden, all you wanted to do is buy that NFT, but now you have to kind of get accustomed and buy cryptocurrency. So you go and try to do that, and then there's these crazy fees. You know, if you're not on Coinbase Pro, you're gonna be paying like 20% on your money if you do a small amount of money. It's pretty crazy. So this process is very arduous, and we're not even done. So you buy the cryptocurrency. There could be a several-day waiting period to do this with Coinbase. And then you have to transfer your cryptocurrency to a crypto wallet. And then you have to connect your wallet to that original site where the NFT was. And then you can finally buy the NFT. So that's the existing process. You know, there's some companies trying to solve it. They're not doing so well. And so that's why we came in And our process is, you see the NFT you want to buy, you click buy, and you could buy it. Enter in your credit card info, the normal credit card you have in your pocket, your billing address, and you can buy it. And we do a lot of sophisticated, ML and AI stuff on the back end to make sure it's not a fraudulent transaction. We also absorb all the risk. So our partners, our NFT launch partners, our NFT marketplaces, they don't have to worry about chargebacks. And then, yeah, the NFT is issued to you. You can go sell it, transfer it to MetaMask, do whatever you want.
So instead of this process of having to get a crypto wallet, go to an exchange, make an account, buy crypto, and then transfer that crypto to a wallet, and then finally connect it to a website, and then finally I have my NFT, you're providing a solution where it goes, hey, NFT, hey, click, now I have.
Multi-day process down to less than 1 minute. We're building the railroad tracks for the NFT space, and we want you guys to come join us. We're very excited to be here.
Last question. Are there any exciting things that we can look forward to in the future through NFT Pay?
Yeah, there are. We found a lot of things. There's a lot of things out there, again, that are way more complicated and difficult than they need to be in the blockchain space. And as you know, every problem is an opportunity turned upside down. So we're taking some of those problems. Some of them are kind of confidential and secret. And we're going to be launching them one by one. And it's going to make a major impact, just like NFT Pay already has for NFT launches. Our customers are so happy. We have a full Google Doc of quotes from people that love us because it increases their revenue 2 to 10x implementing a solution where people could just pay with a credit card. It's so crazy. So we're going to keep tackling these, and we want to meet other like-minded entrepreneurs and partners that are building similar technologies that'll help the masses, the Web 2 people, come to Web 3, because we think there's a lot of value in Web 3.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
Welcome. Thank you, guys. Come visit our booth. Appreciate it.
Onboarding new users, getting 1 billion people into Web3. These are bold, bold ideas. But to be honest, with the innovators that we have out here, with the creators that we have out here, it is completely feasible. I'm so excited to be on a stage that allows people to come up and not only dream big, not only speak big, but be creating big. Be creating solutions that offer people the chance to participate in new economies they've never been able to participate before, to provide for themselves in places in ways that they've never been able to provide for themselves before, and to just be able to be on the cutting edge, the front edge of new burgeoning technology and spaces. I don't know about you people, but I think it's pretty exciting. Wait. I'm going to turn around, and then when I turn back around, I'm going to ask the question again. I don't know about you people, but I think it's pretty exciting. Okay, that's how I thought Texas got down, because I was confused for a second, so thank you very much. As I said, there is a lot of innovation coming up in this Web3 and NFT space. This next piece of innovation is, how do you bring together brands and NFTs, big name spaces and big innovative plans? How do you enmesh them together and create relationships that will bring new ways of being to video games, to blockchain-based technologies, to NFTs? Well, please put your hands together and let's welcome to the stage Mr. Owen Ma to talk to us just about that.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Owen Ma. I'm a co-founder and head of partnerships at Epik. And my primary responsibility at Epik is all of our brand and game partnerships. What is Epik? We are a leading B2B NFT platform, working with AAA game companies and large entertainment IP. Some of our roster of clients include all the biggest names from entertainment, from Tencent, Garena, Gameloft, and even Universal and Warner Music. So today I'm going to be talking about some things more on a practical level. Sorry, one second here. The clicker is not working. Got some technical difficulties here, guys. Hello. Sorry, guys. Oh, there we go. Awesome. So I'm going to be talking about some things more on a practical level today, so more of something that you can execute. So we're going to break things up. We're going to talk about the psychology behind the NFT hype, the business of licensing, and I'm going to give you a quick little 4-part playbook on how to get brands and IP into your metaverse or game. So we've probably all seen this, large crypto whales buying NFTs like rocks and celebrities buying Bored Apes. So what does all this really mean? Well, people buy things pay real money for virtual items for the same reason they pay for real consumer commodities, namely status, identity, membership, class, and performance. So what does all this really mean? It all boils back down to brands and licensing. Because let's face it, brands sell, IP sells. People want to associate themselves with a certain type of brand. Think of it like even, whether you're a Tesla guy or a Ferrari guy, or maybe you're an iPhone user or an Android user. So NFTs is really all about licensing because NFT is really just a new product category. So what that means is that with digital content, brands are looking for ways to engage their consumers more, and NFTs is becoming that, giving consumers a way to have digital products, but authenticated in where they can own it and really hold it for store value. The next big opportunity of the NFTs, as we've all been hearing, is the metaverse. So the metaverse is really the underlying factor that is putting a lot of NFTs to be able to have interoperability and transferability with all their brand content. For Epik, we do work with a lot of metaverse companies. So if you're a metaverse company, really IP and licensing is really a big part of your strategy because it gives that relatability for the mainstream consumer when they are in a metaverse environment. The next part is a lot of our brand clients also want to be in the metaverse. So our job as their agent is to really put them into the right ones that satisfy the same type of brand content to give them that engagement. The next part is really a quick step-by-step guide on how to approach licensing. So if you're a game or a metaverse or even NFT marketplace, these are some quick approaches on how you can get that. So we're going to break it down into a quick, what we call the field of play, who the players are, the different strategies in licensing, and of course the end game, why you want IP in the first place. So really, I talked about licensing. Really, it's just an exchange of value to incorporate somebody else's IP into your product or services. The concept seems pretty straightforward, but with licensing, it's actually quite complex. With that, it's not about what you know or even how much money you have, but one of the biggest, darkest secrets of licensing is really who you know and how to get that relationship. A lot of the points in licensing really boils down to even understanding the rights owner, sort of what their strategy is. It's not so simple as approaching them with a lot of money, but if they're a bigger brand, they may even want or care more about the reputation of their brand first. So depending on the type of game or metaverse that you are, definitely there's certain strategies to think about before that. So that leads us into the know your opponent. So one thing about licensors is that, as I mentioned, it's not always about money. One thing to consider is even what is their strategy. So depending on the brand, they might be looking at fixed number of deals that they want to write per year, or maybe it's a different brand that wants to do a lot of frequency. An example of this is even like Robert De Niro, big famous actor, but he only does a couple movies once every year, versus somebody like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who's literally everywhere, anytime, all day. So those are things you need to understand when approaching a brand to do licensing. Another component is maybe it's about the right timing and the fit. So a brand might actually be looking for a type of game that they want to be in that you may not even know about. So obviously some other things to consider when you're looking at licensing. The next part is what we call the quarterback. So this is the guy who's going to be doing your IP strategy for you. He's going to be the one who's approaching rights owners. Things he's going to consider is even how much to pay, what is the term of the deal, how to reach out to them even in the first place. One of the things that one might consider even about doing licensing with the quarterback is even what is your own strategy. Some things with even you as a metaverse or a game, the reality is as well that you might not even be ready for any licensing. So some of the things that we need to do is, have your game build up some more compelling metrics. What are your engagement? What are the reasons why a brand should work with you? And even if it might not happen today, we can work together to kind of build that narrative and the story as you escalate into different type of brands. The other thing is join forces. What does that mean? So with Epik, we've been successful in putting multiple brands under one campaign. So taking one IP, one example is Ultraman, a very famous anime IP, and we put them into 3 different video games, from one of the #1 MMORPGs called Arena of Valor to a premium console game called Maximum Override, and then obviously casual runner games. What's the benefit of that? We're able to spread the cost of that licensing IP over 3 different type of games, so obviously everybody wins on that scenario. And what is the result of all this? Well, namely crossovers. And why are crossovers important? Crossovers is truly that new unique content that gets created. We see this all the time in physical merchandise, like those new set of Michael Jordans and Nikes that we see every year, Kanye West and Adidas. Once we get into that with digital, that is the true unique content, and applying NFTs to it is what's going to make something truly unique and digital collectible. And then the last part is why. So if you do want to do licensing, one of the best things to really think about is, what is the reason that you want to do it in the first place? Is it to make money? Is it to drive more engagement with your fans? Or is it really, to bring your game or product to the next level with higher PR value? So a lot of these things you should consider when going into licensing, because it helps you navigate and get your stories right into your main reasons. So for Epik, a lot of our clients, one of their main reasons to do licensing is these top 3, which is retention. So they want to create new content to keep their users onto their platforms and even attract new users. New engagement, so it's that new unique content that gets created that drives the engagement, leading to the last part, which is monetization and how they make money. So that's one of the primary things of the whys. And yeah, there you have it. It's really a quick step-by-step of what's involved in licensing. So if you thought about getting different IP that you want to get into your game or metaverse, definitely consider these 4 areas. And with Epik, again, we work with over 300 plus game company clients, from mainstream games that include half the top 25 publishers in the world, and definitely open to meet with everybody here at our booth if you want to learn more about how to get licensed content into your metaverse or game. Thanks very much.
So interesting, such good information, especially when you think about the impact that artists like Travis Scott and his collaboration with Fortnite, and how many people it reached, right? So this is a new level, a new way in which to integrate maybe this kind of licensing with big brand names into the potential of your metaverse or your NFT. Who knows? The options are endless. One thing about mass adoption is you have to be able to support the weight, right? You have to be able to support the people that you want to come onto your platforms. Well, our platforms are currently labeled as layer 1s and layer 2s, right? So behind the scenes, back here where all the cool kids are, I was asking our next panelists some words, one word to describe the effects of scalability and speed solutions to layer 1 and layer 2s. And they gave me some beautiful words that I know that they're probably going to touch on today. So without further ado, let's look at what are the mechanisms in which we can scale and speed up layer 1 and layer 2 solutions. Please give me a hand in welcoming to the stage our moderator for the panel, Mr. Simon.
Hello, hello, welcome everybody. I will now call out all of our panelists here.
This is the scalability panel to talk about how we can scale blockchain to the mainstream. Everyone can come on out and we'll do self-introductions. Will be the easiest to do. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. Slide over. All right. So, Elena, can you tell me a little bit more about yourself and your company? We'll go down the row, Brad and on.
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Elena Sinelnikova. I'm CEO and co-founder of Metis. Metis is, so first of all, of course, this is a layer 2, but we also the platform for the economy. We're building a platform for not only for Web3, but also we're right now working with a lot of Web2 customers that would like to onboard on blockchain.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm James, the CEO of Rio, and we have a layer 1 blockchain called Rio Chain, as well as a layer 2 called Mana Protocol, which is a gasless games chain for GameFi projects in Metaverse. We have a game development studio where we create new projects for the Metaverse, and we also have a digital securities exchange called Rio Stocks, where we're licensed to be able to trade fractionalized NFTs as well as security tokens. So pleasure to be here.
Hey everybody, I'm Bradley Stevenson, a member of the Syscoin Foundation Board, nonprofit. Syscoin is a layer 1 that's very focused on security and decentralization as the foundation for the capstone of scalability through a modular architecture. We retain proof of work. We solve the problems associated with proof of work that people often bring up, right? So we're heading into some really interesting times with the emergence of layer 2 for computation that I think will be very relevant to mass adoption, right? And we like to maintain focus on the things that gave blockchain value to begin with, which were decentralization and security. And it's, we need to keep focus on that.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeff. I'm the community lead at Cadena, where I focus on attracting, engaging, and growing the community from outside and within the Cadena ecosystem. And if you don't know about Cadena, we're the only scalable and secure proof of work layer 1 blockchain out there. That's a handful, but I could explain more about our scalability in a bit.
Great, thank you all. Really appreciate it. Thank you, and I'll introduce myself very briefly. My name is Simon Bogdanovich. I'm your moderator today. I've been in the space since 2017, worked under a couple different banners, including a company you might know from back in the day called Block Team Ventures, which I co-founded. Now I'm working with Gravity Ventures, a Web3 venture studio based between Dubai and the United States. I also am a strategic advisor for Kudos, which is a layer 1 carbon neutral blockchain built on Cosmwasm and Cosmos with a layer 2 distributed cloud computing platform that powers and will be powering a lot of the dApps and metaverses on all major blockchains. So that being said, I think this is an issue, scalability is an issue that we've been, obviously, everyone that's been in blockchain for any amount of time has been trying to wrap their heads around for a long time. There's always been a trade-off, right, between security, decentralization, transaction costs, throughput, and whatnot. And the onset of layer 2s and everything that we're seeing today, along with the bridges and interoperability, are all trying to get to that same point of finding a way to scale to the masses. That's why I'm very excited to be speaking with you all, because all these companies are very, very impressive. They're all doing their part in trying to achieve what we all want to achieve in really touching every single industry and really bringing blockchain and our solutions to the billions of people around the world. So that being said, love to get a response from each of you on like what is each of your companies doing at a high level to address scalability with the grander hopes of affecting not only your community but the communities beyond your companies. Maybe I'll start at the very end here with Jeff first.
Hey everyone. So at Cadena, we're kind of unique in that we we have solved the scalability issue that has plagued proof of work blockchains like from Bitcoin to Ethereum. And how we do this is by having a braided chain architecture where we have multiple individual chains, think like Ethereum chain or a Bitcoin chain, braided together to form a set of chains to form this network. And so as you increase or add more chains to our network, you combine the individual throughput of each individual chain to increase the overall throughput of the entire network. So Kadena started off with 10 chains, and we scaled from 10 to 20 chains during the summer of 2020, and that increased throughput. And so we can scale from 20 chains to 50 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000. You name the chain, we can scale to it. And so this dramatically increases the benefit inherent to proof of work, which is security and decentralization, and then reduces the inherent disadvantages, so we can increase throughput infinitely and take no additional hash rate. And so by accessing this kind of key to unlimited scalability, we're able to bring proof of work back at the forefront of blockchain adoption and leading, the final stages of bringing blockchain to the masses.
Yes, Syscoin has been quite a ride. So I've been involved with the project since about late 2016. And I've seen a lot of evolution, with our development and our roadmap. So, what we are essentially, as I said, is a layer one that is modular in its architecture. We're merge mined with Bitcoin. So what we're doing is inheriting a significant percentage of security from the Bitcoin mining network. Typically right now, it varies between 25 and 30% of Bitcoin's miners supporting the Syscoin network in terms of hash power. That's not without its flaws though. So naive merge mining is still subject to 51% attacks. It still lacks finality. And some of these other things. One thing that it is great with is that it's carbon neutral, right? So Bitcoin miners do not have to extend any additional work in order to help mine Syscoin. So there's a two-way incentive here. We're inheriting, the decentralized proof of work from Bitcoin, as well as those miners are receiving block rewards, right? So Satoshi Nakamoto put forth merge mining, a good while back, right? It's been overlooked. Another thing is through our modular architecture, we're able to solve problems with proof of work that are pretty commonly brought up. Things like 51% attacks, the lack of finality. We're able to provide finality actually in a very timely fashion. So that leads essentially to safer DeFi, a carbon neutral layer one that is quite secure. And as far as scalability is concerned, we're really looking to implement rollups. We feel that that's really the gateway to mass adoption as far as the user experience is concerned. The layer one with a rollup type environment is essentially abstracted away from the end user. So perhaps the layer one has a longer block time than one would expect. Maybe it's much longer than 10 seconds. Well, if the security assumptions on the layer two are not violating the security assumptions on the layer one, and all of that passes through, then there's not really a need for the layer one to have like super short block target, right? You can focus completely on decentralization and security at the layer one for the most part, and data availability as well. That's very important for rollups too. But this frees us up from being kind of stuck within this monolithic architectural paradigm where we're trying to force layer one to do everything for everybody, right? We're trying to force it to scale. We're trying to force the fees to be low, and all of this, when blockchain in reality, what it's best at is decentralized secure settlement. And layer two is really best for things like mass adoption, incredible throughput, and flexibility for business models, right? So yeah, that's a little bit about what we're doing.
No, I think you might have answered a few of my questions all in one, so I appreciate that. No, but go ahead. No, that's very valuable. I was just actually thinking while you guys were both speaking, like we should, there should be more associations just dedicated to scalability and just like focused around getting together, not only amongst ourselves, but also with policymakers and everything else to really have the convergence of the mainstream and the blockchain worlds as we want to see it in the future. But go ahead and love to hear from you on addressing scalability and how you do it at Rio.
Yeah, sure. So through Rio Chain, we're built around Parity's substrate framework for the Polkadot ecosystem because we think that the future of interoperability of blockchains is necessary for scalability because it's not just going to be one solution to solve everything, right? There's going to be different blockchain applications for all sorts of different use cases, whether it be for GameFi, Metaverse, supply chain management, health data management. Some blockchains might need more private data, others need more public data, depending on what they're doing. So with Rio Chain, we have up to 3,000 transactions per second, which we think is good at this point, but we'll continue working on the scalability of it. And we're expanding our validator set now. We also have the Frontier tool set, which allows us to connect to the Ethereum virtual machine, EVM. That way we can easily onboard Ethereum-based apps onto Rio Chain. As well, we have the Mana protocol, which is a layer 2 solution that's going to enable a gasless games chain. So this is going to be really important because when you're playing a blockchain game or you're in the metaverse, you don't want to have to click every 30 seconds and say, yes, I confirm this transaction, yes, and then wait for the blocks to confirm. Like that would be a very bad gaming experience. So, we think it's important to have that kind of run in the background, to have some of the data off-chain, some of the data on-chain. Otherwise, it would be too expensive and really not needed because, most gamers, they want a fun game. They don't want to have to, confirm things all the time. So we think that this is the answer, is to have interoperability between blockchains, which is something that Rio Chain's enabling in order to have many different solutions to the scalability issue.
Yeah, so a few key words there that you pointed out were run in the background. I think that's one thing that we need to really cement in our heads, right? Everything we're talking about here should really be thought about like, hey, how's it running in the background? What is the real user experience? Like, we're not thinking of the internet, right? When like, hey, what's the code behind this this web domain and how is it built? That's kind of what you guys are building and everything else. We got to get to the point of scalability where that's kind of forgotten about from a consumer facing and business facing perspective, the UI UX of it. But yeah, great answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, so at Metis, what we do, and that's what Brad talked about, roll-up. So roll-up is basically bundling, taking millions of transactions, bundling them all together and committing them into the L1 at once. So that brings ultimate scalability. Though, of course, it is creating other problems. And this is the problems that we're solving with Metis by committing not all data at once, but it's actually partial data and then data on demand as well, which allowed us to bring the cost of the transaction to 1 cent on Ethereum right now, which is a great achievement. And we right now the cheapest L2 on Ethereum. But at the same time, we're not compromising the security because we are actually enhancing the security by covering all the fraud proofs, the incentives, and also the decentralizing more the sequencer, for example, those actors who are posting transactions to L1. Majority of rollups right now, they only have one. It means that if it's compromised, then it is like finita. We are addressing that as well. So by decentralizing that in the peer network, and where everyone has a turn to be a sequencer and be incentivized and punished for the good and bad actions as well. So that is what is our, I would say, revolutionary technology at Metis. And at this point, we did solve the blockchain trilemma problem. We're not compromising security, we're actually enhancing it, and we are bringing the cost just to the minimum and the speed of the transactions as well to the maximum. That's what we do. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Elena, back to you. What would you say are, in your view, the most promising interoperability and bridge solutions out today that are really really solving kind of scalability issues today? Or if you want to think about it, what do you anticipate in the future that, in the same vein, that's exciting, that's going to be coming out in 2022 and beyond from an interoperability bridging perspective?
So again, so bridging perspective and interoperability, it has to be for the reason. So what reason, what problem we're trying to solve by creating these bridges and interoperability? It's actually to enhancing either, speed or security or the lowering the cost. I think that's the reasons why it should be interoperable. And yeah, like for example, like one of the examples has storing data, for example, not only on one chain, but on other chains as well, to first of all, to include other players into verifying the data. So that brings more, not only the interoperability, but brings it for the exact reason of the security. And, decentralization, in my opinion, is the ultimate security. More chains we have, more interoperable we are, more secure we are, because we are more decentralized.
Yeah, feel free to open questions. So feel free if you have any views or comments on that.
Yeah, sure. So as far as bridges and interoperability, I always encourage users to look at the underlying design, understand the security implications of a system that you're using. Every time you use a bridge from one ecosystem to another, there could be completely different security assumptions there. So the more you're using these systems, obviously, kind of the more risk you're taking on. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a decision that people need to make, and make it an informed decision, right? But bridges are absolutely critical. There are so many different architectures out there, and different layer ones, that we absolutely need portability, and they can be used as a means for users towards a kind of scalability. If another chain or another system has essentially more runway, then that's a quick way to move their value to something that will be a little bit more ideal for whatever their use case is, right? So I think bridges will continue to be important. I think the time will come for enterprise blockchains and private blockchains. I think they'll kind of have a time in the sun at some point, particularly when regulations become clearer. And I think bridges will be absolutely key for them as well.
Yeah, following through on the bridge, topic, I think you're going to have so many different solutions to blockchain scalability, right? And if you don't have the various networks being able to move assets across each other, then you're going to miss out on millions of users, because each user has their own sort of favorite ecosystem, right? You have your ETH fanboys, you have your Cardano fanboys, you have fanboys from every ecosystem, right? And girls, right? And so I think it's important, if you're building a game, you're building a metaverse, you want to be able to support as many blockchains as possible. Obviously, you focus on one probably to start, but if you want to bring over those millions of users into your game, onto your ecosystem, you inherently need some sort of cross-chain solution. You need some sort of bridge. And whether it be cross-chain DeFi, which is called CrossFi, it's quite interesting how that's been evolving. We saw certainly the risks of that. There have been hacks on a number of bridges, but it's a space that's quickly evolving, and I think it's something that we learn from each hack. We grow stronger, more resilient. It doesn't mean stop building bridges. It just means let's build them better.
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, that's a great point. So when I think of that question, I think about how interoperability and bridges at first help with scalability, where projects that are congested or aren't as scalable will use kind of other projects and use their underlying network to scale and bring users to use your project. And so what Kadena does is already has solved that scalability issue on that layer one on that base layer. So users can essentially, projects and users can come and trade their favorite tokens and kind of have that multi-protocol kind of system where you could trade your ETH, you could trade your Solana, you could trade your NFTs all on Kadena. And Kadena is fundamentally a bridge itself, like Chainweb, our consensus mechanism that I was telling you guys earlier about the braided architecture. That is, each individual chain is a bridge to one another. And so we kind of have internal bridges, if you could think of it that way. So with Pact making these bridges between chains easier, we can bridge to different protocols as well, just as easy. So, yeah.
Yeah, the whiteboarding session will be right immediately after this panel. No, but it's all very interesting. Hopefully we have some people who are quite technical in the crowd as well, because this is very valuable. And live streaming from home and around the world and online. I want to get into something that's very interesting that's really come up in the last couple of years around parachains, as well as app-specific blockchains and enterprise blockchains. So how do you see one, two, or all three of these improving scalability in our industry? And then whoever wants to speak first can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I think obviously parachains are quite a useful solution. I'm a bit biased since RioChain is competing for a parachain slot. But what Gavin Wood and the Parity team has built for the Polkadot ecosystem is quite innovative. And having the connective layer of Frontier to connect to Ethereum virtual machine, to be able to port those smart contracts over, one of the things they did, they created this like layer 0 blockchain that is the shared security layer for all the parachains that build on top. And so they focus specifically on the security and the governance, and they leave the scalability to each individual parachain, which I think is a good model. And I'm not 100% certain of Cosmos's whole ecosystem, but I think it's got a similar type of model in how they handle with the app-specific blockchains. We have Terra being built around the Cosmos SDK. Obviously, there was issues with that ecosystem, but it wasn't really based around the security, although they did have some issues toward the end before they switched to the new version of Terra. But this is a great example of a flexible ecosystem, and one that's able to adapt and evolve, and the rest of the Cosmos ecosystem wasn't taken down by issues on one specific blockchain. So I think that's an important key, is to segregate the risk so that you don't have systemic risk that takes down the entire crypto ecosystem based on one chain failing. That would obviously be a big problem in architecture. And then for enterprise blockchains, I mean, I really do see, I might get some, Bitcoin maximalists to be angry about this, but I do see enterprise blockchains having a very useful place in the blockchain ecosystem. I mean, you're not going to have probably big companies like Walmart, using the Ethereum blockchain. I just, maybe somehow, eventually, maybe they'll use it as a layer 2 to their enterprise blockchain for some sort of data that they need to have secured or something. But I think the idea is to have as many people building blockchain tools as possible, regardless of if it's decentralized, centralized, what is the underlying technology, what is the value, and how do we get more developers from Web 2 into Web 3? Because when they start with an enterprise chain, they'll eventually want to branch outward.
Absolutely. And also off-chain solutions as well, and the interoperability between permissionless, and off-chain is very, very important. I know we're running up on time here, but anyone else have any quick thoughts on parachains or anything of the sort?
Yeah, so for Kadena, we initially had a permission blockchain. And so despite having solved that scalability and issue from the layer 1 protocol, we still feel like there's a need for a permission blockchain. Our permission blockchain is called Coro, and essentially, since projects already have that security, that decentralization, that throughput on that base layer, they can still add their projects that requires reversibility, fast finality, privacy on that layer 2. And this could apply to healthcare, law, real estate, gaming, where you want that fast finality and also privacy of that individual user's information. So doctors could share your medical records really quick and without having to go through bureaucracy.
Yeah, the only thing that I want to add just very briefly is I think that private chains, I think they have their use cases. I think ultimately in the end that open public blockchains will rule, and the reason why relates to trust enclaves, someone using a private chain, an external party may not necessarily want to trust that. It may not be decentralized really to the degree that gave blockchain value, right? So, and there's other things as well, but I think as regulations emerge and become clearer, there will be a time when private blockchains will be relevant, a lot more relevant than they are now. But I think gradually enterprises will move towards open public blockchains with compliance systems that are working with open chains.
Elena, final word.
Yeah, and what I think is also the problem is not as private chains, it's private transactions. So like, it can be all subtracted on that level, on a transactional level.
Well, thank you so much, Jeffrey, Bradley, James, Elena. Please give a hand to the panelists, to the panel if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And that concludes the scalability panel. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
Scalability, we're finding solutions to add more people to this burgeoning space of Web3. What more could you ask for? What more could you want out of a space that's truly allowing self-sovereignty? Well, we've already covered on this main stage play-to-earn gaming, but now we're gonna have a panel speaking about what exactly can you do with play-to-earn gaming? And behind the scenes, where all the fun happens, Bianca Starr, was asking some of the panelists, if play-to-earn gaming is really, you play a game and then earn money, why isn't everyone in the world doing it? And little did I know that countries like Nigeria, the Philippines, and Indonesia are actually implementing this technology, and people are actually playing these games and earning real money. And we're not talking little numbers here. We're talking millions and millions of people. People are actually having jobs, playing games to earn money, and isn't that exciting? But I am not the one who you want to hear from for this. So please join me in welcoming to the stage our moderator, Nelson Merchant, and the rest of the speakers for the panel.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're very excited about this panel. We're going to talk everything about play to earn, and hopefully I learned some things about this panel. Great, so I'll introduce myself quickly and then we'll go with Sergey and keep going down. My name is Nelson. I run Lightno Media. Lightno Media is an advisory, marketing, and events company. We focus on helping mostly early stage crypto projects start, grow, and launch, and really help them from the beginning to their growth stage, and then obviously continuing forward. So we're very excited about the play to earn trend. It's very early, but we've seen some immense success and traction in it, and obviously interested in this panel and what we can learn in terms of where this trend is going and how to make it as sustainable as possible as it keeps growing.
That's great. Thank you for having me here. I'm Sergey. Crypto Media Labs, we're a venture studio, so we are doing projects in gaming side, especially Metaverse, like play-to-earn experience, and we are doing media, and we are famous for our metaverse posts, so like the first fully focused on the metaverse agenda media. So please visit website and check news. And yeah, so
Thank you.
yeah, just go.
Hello. Oh, okay. Hey, my name is Dustin Lee. I'm from Evolution Land. It's a metaverse blockchain game with interoperability. We allow other projects to build into our game and interoperable their NFTs. We're heterogeneous by nature, utilizing Darwinia as our light client messaging protocol to utilize technology, the gamification for crypto and blockchain.
Nice. My name is Peter Ng. I'm from blockchain space. So I'm actually based in the Philippines, so in the heart of where Play-to-Earn actually kind of exploded. I'm in the intersection of Dustin and John here, connecting the players to gaming guilds. So I'm actually building the software to support all the gaming guilds as well as data analytics.
Yep, John Monahan with Splinterlands, and gave a talk up here just maybe a half hour ago. But we're a play-to-earn game, or I prefer to call it play and earn. But we've been around for about 4 years, and a collectible card game on chain.
Awesome. So I think we could start with a very broad question, which is what is play-to-earn gaming? If you guys could kind of give your own view of what that means.
Play-to-earn games, it's not when you play and you earn something. It's the space where people could create some value and other people could consume this value, entertainment value, I mean. So for me, it is like this.
Play-to-earn space, I would say it would be unbanking the unbanked and allowing for those who are not able to access traditional accessibility. Will be able to empower them and bringing those who are somewhat left behind into the future of Web3.
I'll take this from a social mobility standpoint. So being from the Philippines, I saw firsthand how powerful, play-to-earn gaming can be as an onboarding tool into Web3, right? So you see that the first experience for people getting into crypto was actually through a game and not through a mobile wallet. So they didn't see MetaMask first. They saw a game on their phone. They earn 1,000 tokens, and then they want to know, okay, what can I do with these tokens? How do I cash it out? Right, and that's how they learn about wallets and technologies, right? So I see Play-to-Earn as a huge onboarding tool for right now. I'd say developing markets are probably the most interested markets that make the most sense, right? So if you're earning $100 per month, where is that $100 relevant? Which countries? So is that relevant in Venezuela, countries in Africa, India, Philippines, and so on? So for me, play-to-earn gaming is actually a part of this NFT gaming space that is now empowering developing markets to come into Web3.
Yeah, and for us, I'll take it a slightly different direction, but it's an alignment of incentives. There's millions and millions and millions of people out there that have played video games for years, and Web3 has opened up the opportunity to actually own the assets within the game and to participate in the economy around the game. And so the ability to earn from a game, I think, adds a new layer of incentive, and I think that it's going to become very popular with the Web2 crowd once we get them all onboarded.
The last 2 years, we've seen an immense explosion in play-to-earn space. What do you think created this explosion? What made it possible, and also what was necessary in order for this really to kind of happen?
Free money, people I want money, I want to play games, do nothing, and got some money. So to be honest, it's all about speculation. Like, come on, guys.
So again, I was in the Philippines where Axie exploded, right? So, so they were kind of like, it was perfect timing. There was a lot of like market factors that were just right for like the whole growth, right? So I think it started with this one story where there was basically a Filipino player out in a rural area of the Philippines, and he was basically playing Axie around the clock, like 24/7 for a number of months. And so Axie actually investigated his account and was like, is this a bot, right? And they were thinking there's no way that one player could be playing so many hours, you know, for how many weeks, right? And then when they investigated, they said, okay, show us proof, right? And so this guy sent back a video, and it was him in his house, and there was like his aunt, his grandma, his cousins. They were all sitting there, and then everyone was holding a mobile phone, you know, playing Axie. And then they realized, okay, wait a minute, the people are really using this game to actually, you know, play around the clock to be able to earn, right? And this is in the middle of COVID, and there was an article that one of my colleagues, Leah Callan Butler, wrote for CoinDesk. She highlighted exactly that story where the guy basically had, you know, created this, found that basically, you know, he could invite his family and relatives basically to come and play this and earn more than the average wage, right? So back then it was around $250 per month is the average wage in the Philippines. This guy was making over $1,000 per month, and each one of those accounts was making over $1,000. So I definitely say there is definitely a financial incentive, right, to get involved, right? And of course, that was at the peak of, like, just at the beginning of COVID. And so when COVID hit, a lot of people lost their jobs. They were all turning to kind of like, what are these alternatives? And that narrative basically got has amplified, right? So that kind of brought in like the masses of all the people in the Philippines. Yeah, I think, yeah, and you know, the earning potential kind of like identifies the markets where it makes sense. So, you know, if it's $1,000 per month, you might not see a lot of people in developed markets, you know, playing the game, because it probably doesn't make that much sense for them. They have to invest about 3-4 hours a day playing the game. But for markets where, you know, $1,000 a month is, you know, above average wage, and they have the time to spare, like for, you know, gig economy workers, then I think it makes a lot of sense.
But I know a lot of people. Can you hear me? I know a lot of people in the U.S. who are working in their sneakers and stuff, and so it's about free money as well, you know.
No, absolutely, it's definitely about. Yeah, there's definitely an the money aspect, and I think, yeah, I guess you have some questions about the evolution of this as well.
Yeah, you know, I think in Hello, there we go. I think in developed markets too, you know, you have a couple of other different things going on as well. For one, you have a justification of habits, right? So I have a gaming habit. I love playing games. It's my primary form of entertainment. Holy shit, I can make a little bit of money doing this too, right? So that's I think that's one justification. And then, you know, you also get people that are really interested in the gamification of their investments. You know, so I think doing a little bit of gamification of investments is another piece that makes a lot of sense for at least a certain subset of our user base, right? And I think that user base is going to continue to grow as well.
Yeah, touching on the gamification is you know, really utilizing the accessibility for a lot of these like crypto heads, and kind of allowing them to, you know, utilize these NFTs that wouldn't in most cases be kind of like a, you know, PFP aspect. You know, the utilization of these projects can be brought forward with, you know, with pretty simple integration. The biggest factor is, you know, there's a lot of like, you know, maximalists in the space per se, you know, if they're, you know, specific crypto or you know, gaming space. You know, play to earn is fairly new, but in the crypto sense, of course, it's been out for a very long time. And in projects like, you know, even like Diablo, we just introduced like having, you know, $100,000 worth of digital content to upgrade your characters. People can put this into the Web3 space and have forward compatibility and being interoperable, and utilizing these NFTs into future cases in other games and other metaverses to not be so segregated into one established space per se.
As we've seen with the current hype cycle that is really, I think, dying down because of the bear market, I think a lot of these play-to-earn games are becoming more focused on the actual sustainability as opposed to just riding the hype. So as you guys are leading these play-to-earn games, supporting them on the guild side as well, what are some of the variables that you've seen and identified that are very important to have a very to utilize that hype, to utilize that potential significant growth immediately, but also be able to have that more longer term sustainability, both on the token side, on the NFT side, and really for the user itself?
Community is a big piece of that, right? So community is massive. I think that people want to feel connected. They want to feel like they're in it together. So I think community is a massive component to sustainability. But the entertainment value of the game has to be there as well. So the entertainment value has to be there independent of the earnings. So we're going to have a whole subset of the population that are going to get into these games to play the game itself, not necessarily to earn. The earning can be nice, but I think the sustainability ties back to those two things 100%.
And I totally agree. Entertainment. Come on, let's make games like, like I think 90% from blockchain games, it's blockchain games. It's at first blockchain. It's not interesting to play. Like how many people from this audience playing every day, like games, like crypto games? I think not many of you. So, but every day I think you play some games on your computer, on your mobile phone, just gaming because it's interesting, it's cool. So let's make some games, let's make some entertainment. And this main message, don't think about like talking. It's okay. You can think about economy, but at first, entertainment. People should like it. It's 2 billion people playing mobile games. Come on, let's get them right now. Listen, okay?
I'll come from a slightly different angle. So my focus is really on gaming guilds. At Blockchain Space, we managed to map out around 23,000 gaming guilds around the world. And the question is, you probably are thinking, why is it such a large number? And the question is, how do you define a gaming guild? Right? And for us, we define it as anyone that has a community that has over 10 active accounts within an NFT game. Right. And what we saw is like a lot of micro communities. So we go back to this community aspect again. What's happening now is like a lot of people coming into Web3 through, gaming as the door that brings them in. And now they have these like crypto native communities that they basically all nurture, right? And a lot of these communities are actually quite small. We call them micro guilds. Their Discord size is typically around like 200 people within the Discord, and then only few players. But these guys are now not just playing games, but they are, investing into other NFTs, other token assets, and then teaching people basically how to use more Web3 native kind of applications. So I'm seeing these as like basically the Web3, micro Web3 communities that are basically ready to be engaged with, for more activities.
Peter, do you feel like entertainment value enhances a guild's sustainability in a particular game as well? Like, is the entertainment value still important to the guild, even if their primary focus is to make a living?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just like any other community, I think you need to have something that basically engages the community, keeps them there, and keeps them active. Right. I think games are going to be a very important part of that. I don't think it's going to be the only thing that keeps guilds active, but being able to kind of like incentivize certain actions within games, to be able to learn, and I think there is a learning aspect as well, right? Like you can learn how to, transfer assets from this to that and so on, right? I think that's kind of like where we're heading towards.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Most of my career I spent in education technology, right? And there's a lot of research that goes into the impact that gamification has on learning science. And so it's very well known that gamification of any process is going to make that information stickier, right? So it's a little bit easier to learn something if the process itself is gamified. What better way to do that than through gaming?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of where our focus is. We built up the underlying technology And that's been the most, somewhat hurdle that we've had when it comes to connecting with, the fellow other blockchain space. But to us is like that the interoperability and the underlying technology is most important to bringing forward to a multi-chain ecosystem. And so now that we can utilize our gamification to show the technology without having to know how it works, if it's, sending tokens, if it's, bridging assets in any sense, if it's NFTs, we don't have to technically teach that to the Web 2 space, but they can slowly learn it in a gamification. And then once they're adopted to that aspect, then it's easily accessible for them and they understand how it works. And that's the biggest thing for Web 2 to Web 3, I would say, for the transitional space, is that they don't understand how the underlying technology works. Or if a player per se plays a game to earn DLC content, then they can have that DLC content forever instead of just being locked into a certain game. They can utilize it into other games. You can have it forward compatible or composable NFTs. They're upgradable as you move on with the space, and you're not sandboxed into that particular blockchain or game itself.
I think one of the big questions that is related to that is, do you need to know how the underlying technology works, right? So this idea of frictionless crypto, I mean, if you're there as a gamer and you're there for the entertainment value, I think the games that can make that process completely frictionless are going to be among those that come out on top.
Yeah, totally. Like, and that's the thing is like it's usually visually appealing for most Web 2 game players, and it's totally understandable. But where we're at, we're finally getting to the point of accessing our technology to the maximum, so we can start building with Unity or Unreal, and utilizing chains that use that technology to be implemented in our game without having to understand it per se. So yeah, it's important for traditional gamers to have an easy onboarding access, so it's not so troubling and daunting for these players.
Community obviously is extremely important in these play-to-earn games, and it would be great to know what role guilds play in this specific community building, as well as the development that guilds have had, a very rapid development in really the last year. And I think one of the big takeaways that I'm seeing with a lot of these play-to-earn games is everybody was very bullish on getting guilds on board, but when you really look at the financial aspect of it, the way that guilds make money is by making as much money as possible by playing the game, which if you're looking at the sustainability of these games, that's very difficult for these games to be able to have their breakout moment. So how do you gauge, one, the development of these guilds, as they need to cater to these games to support the community, to economically allow the sustainability to be there, but also obviously have that profit margin? How does that impact, I think, the development of these guilds?
I want to hear John talk about it first.
I think balance is the key, right? So, I can tell our story a little bit. So we've been around for 4 years. We really didn't have any sort of dedicated focus or emphasis, or even onboarding process for guilds until relatively recently, right? So we built a pretty large community organically, right? And very enthusiastic supporters, people that are in for the long haul. And, that was in place first. And so I think one of the side effects of that is that our economy could handle the impact of the guild coming in. I think one of the ironies of focusing too much on the economics and not enough on the entertainment value is that if everybody is only in the game to extract value from the game, then the economy is going to crash, right? So the entertainment value has to be there, and it's good to start with a really strong community. If you can successfully build a strong community, then that creates, honestly, the ideal environment for guilds to come in, because they can come in and they can extract value without crashing the economy. But then they can also learn that, hey, this game's fun and we like playing this game. And so they're having fun doing their jobs as well. And you start entering in a scenario where, it's hard to see anybody losing. Everybody wins that way. So I think balance is the key. It's important. It goes right back to the community and the entertainment value. Those two things. If you have those two things in place, then I think a game can really sustain a large number of large guilds.
Yeah. So I'll add on to that. So I think guilds have definitely been portrayed as value extractors within the current game systems, right? And I think that's it's not incorrect, right? And probably the guild model itself should actually change a bit, so guilds actually add more value, back into the gaming ecosystem, right? Because you don't want to just extract value. I think, but the guilds are not doing something that they weren't supposed to. Actually, they're just bringing more gamers into the game, at a faster pace than like the games are ready to accommodate. So I mean, the games themselves have to be ready to kind of pull some levers to make sure the onboarding experience, isn't, affected or compromised by the speed of which guilds are actually bringing players in. And like you've seen it with, again, we'll go to Axie. No offense to Splinterlands, but the growth can be really fast. So we saw like Axie go from like 500 players to like 3 million players in the course of like a year, right? And that's the speed of that was insane, right? And I think there's something that the game itself, like Axie themselves, could have actually controlled in terms of like not onboarding too many value extractors and making sure that, because for their token, they were, the mechanics are you either earn or you spend in breeding, right, to create more characters. And then I think they weren't able to basically balance the two, right, as the number of players were coming in. And I think there's, it still needs to be tested, basically, whether you can actually kind of balance the economy by just taking on board the right number of people at the right time. But I also think that guilds are basically should be held accountable to kind of put more value back into the games, right? So that whether that's like, bringing more people into the game itself, like by making your guild larger, by by contributing kind of like community incentives or something to actually put a value back in. But also like you want to keep, the game itself wants to create incentives for people to stick within their ecosystem as well, so that they don't just, take out the tokens, extract value, and then leave and jump to the next game. And it becomes like a yield farming exercise. Right, so I think things like we were talking about composability of like assets. Like if you can upgrade assets, that become more valuable over time, right? That'll keep guilds within your system, right? Because let's say like the higher the asset has been leveled up, right? The higher the earning potential, or like the more added value you get, basically.
Yeah, projects like or guilds like YGG we've partnered with, they do bring a lot of incentivization for projects like ours. It brings a lot of eyes and attention to our space. I think it's a positive. There's some negative aspect in some sense, but overall, I believe it brings a lot more community awareness, and that's been the biggest vision and drive for most projects is keeping that economic loop in some sense, but also bringing a community driven behind these projects. Like, the market might have certain conditions, but these communities will stick around. They still have these assets, so there's no reason for them to be considered, a complete extractor of these projects, because in the end, they're going to be the ones that are incentivized to play the game. They're not going to just give up on the game immediately. Yes, there might be some downfall in these times where economically is not incentivized, but in the end, they will turn around and come back into focus and be able to get back in these projects. And mentioning composable NFTs, they can use these NFTs that they've earned or purchased on the market and be able to upgrade them in time and upgrade them, and they have a value to them, as in the sense of they can earn more higher potentials. And some of these NFTs are hard to get. You know, there might be some type of success rate being able to produce these. Like ours, there's an incentive, kind of a loop to it, in the sense of there's a sink. You know, like you might lose your resources or whatnot by producing these specific NFTs. And in the end, it becomes a rarity to aspect that, you know, if it's a collectible aspect, if it's incentivizing holding these particular NFTs because it has, you know, whatever status or whatnot, it brings, you know, these communities like YGG per se, to stick around and be able to add value instead of just extracting them. Yeah.
Great. I think we are done. But thank you everyone for your thoughts. I mean, this play to earn gaming, it's very exciting because there's a lot of experimentation that occurs in these hype cycles, and the ones that are able to survive, which is really, I think, the key in crypto, are the ones that are really going to change the game. So thank you guys for coming, for building, and for continuing to support the crypto ecosystem.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
An ecosystem that is supporting builders, play to earn gaming, supporting developing and traditional ways of being. Play to earn gaming is a way in which to envision how to actually earn an income, how to be a creator in this future. Well, speaking of creators, earlier today we had a Metaverse panel, and one of the panelists really stood out for his forward thinking, for his innovation, and for these just epic ideas of what the future could look like. We spoke back behind the scenes, and we were talking about some crazy technology that can be developed, and I'm so excited to have him up on the stage to speak about what he's doing. Creating layer ones and creating an opportunity to bring new innovation into the space is exactly what Web3 allows. So without further ado, from Crown Sterling, as a representative, please help me in joining and welcoming to the stage Mr. Robert Grant.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great to be here today. So, if you were here in the earlier session, I talked about data sovereignty and the importance of data sovereignty and why it's going to be so important for us to establish proof of self in the next sort of iteration of where the industry is going. And if we go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So maybe I have a clicker. No one gave me a clicker over there. So basically, data sovereignty is all about the importance of being able to establish who we are and why we want to control our own data. Data is an extension of who we are. And that extension is so important to today's world. Because if you notice what's happening in the world today, we have all kinds of companies that are mining our data in this new thing called neuromining. Now, if we wonder why society has become so terribly polarized, it's in large part because of the fact that we are, all of us, willingly entering into chambers of our own conditioning bias on social media. Now, we all get dopamine when we find out that we're agreed with by other people. We get likes on our social media pages. And as we get those likes, we have more and more drugs. So big tech industry has found a way to be able to be the biggest drug dealer on the planet without even having to manufacture any drugs. So what does this mean? It means we live in a world now where it's not that I can even change my mind anymore, because actually these big tech companies know exactly what I'm going to do through predictive analytics before I even know what I'm going to do next. So this means that if I'm a hammer, then everything's going to look like nails. And I don't even know, I'm not even sentient to the fact that I'm a hammer in this context. So how do we avoid this world? Well, the only way we can avoid this world is by making sure that we own our own data. So a fundamental aspect of this is, first and foremost, that there has to be a data bill of rights. A data bill of rights is an extension of our individual rights and freedoms as human beings to be able to claim our own ownership of our data so that that data cannot be taken by anybody else. In other words, we believe that data is the intangible personal property of the original producers of that data. It shouldn't be owned by some company just because I decided to be on Facebook. Does anyone here know how much money Facebook would have to write you in a check this year for your membership on Facebook because of all the things that they attach to you with beacons following you? Not only when you're on Facebook, but all over your browser usage as well. They'd each have to write us a check of over $2,000 this year. Did you know that it costs you more than $200 in value per month to be on Facebook? And when you look at it that way, in that context, does it make you think, well, do I even really need to be on Facebook at that price? And the value of that data is doubling, almost doubling every year. It was $1,300 the year before and only $800 the year before that. So what we see is that in order for democracy to be maintained, there has to be a mechanism where we can put a fence around our data. And that data can include psychographics, demographics. It's all the subconscious behavioral data that we're not even candidly aware of. And that's the most pernicious, because then with that data, they can direct what information is going to come to you through AI. And that AI can then basically send to you, if you're a Democrat, you're only going to hear messaging about Democrats. If you're a Republican, you're only going to hear messaging that's consistent with being a Republican. So then when it comes to election time, we now have over 40% of the US population believes we're headed towards a civil war. Do you guys know that? That was just polled this week. The reason is because there's so much disenfranchisement going on because people feel like they're just completely unbelieving that anyone could see the world any differently than they do. And we have lost our ability to empathize one with another. That muscle of empathy has all but become vestigial. It is atrophied. So I don't know about you guys, but I like the notion that I can still make choices and change my mind on things through spirited conversation and debate with others. That's part of being a human being. So how do we protect this? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to encrypt it. We have developed a quantum VPN technology that goes on your phone and actually encrypts everything. I'm not just talking about your messages and your telephone calls. I'm talking about your browser history, your geolocation, talking about all the voice, the Siri interactions. Everything becomes fully encrypted under this quantum-resistant VPN technology. Then once you have VPN that technology, then you can actually capture all of your data, and on our platform, you can NFT it. You can decide how you want that data to be sold, if ever at all. To me, it's no different than when I was in college and people would say, hey, let's go sell some blood, plasma, because like we don't have any money. I actually see that for the first time in human history, human beings can now generate value and create value just by being, not by doing. Think about that for a moment. Is there an opportunity now to use data? The world's largest market in the world, it surpassed oil and all the world's natural resources in 2018. If that's the case, then we need to make sure we stake our claim to our own data. And if we don't now, how in the heck can we ever prove who we say we are? This is why Crown Sterling exists. We've created innovative blockchain technology. It's layer one. And also we have swaps as well as wraps to be able to work on all other blockchains. We already have an Ethereum wrap. We're now moving towards a Solana wrap. And then we're also going to be going to Cosmos and all the other blockchains that have layer ones. We want them to be able to use our quantum resistant encryption because we know that right now the government has actually established themselves as the ultimate arbiter because they've been able to establish a world where the encryption they use is one-time pad and the encryption everyone else uses is elliptic curve or RSA. And as a result, that means they can crack all these encryptions on their own using brute force. We've created an architecture and a system so that they cannot do that anymore. And this is why this is so important. So, data needs better protection. The US government just announced that they are requiring that every branch of the US government be on quantum-resistant encryption within the next 3 months from now. Now, the government doesn't do anything fast, and they just came out with this only a couple months ago. But who's actually advocating for it for the blockchain industry? Who's actually making sure? Because, by the way, none of the encryption in blockchain today is quantum resistant. So why is it that the industry isn't also having to keep up with these standards? Well, we can. We have one-time pad encryption. It's the only one that is truly quantum resistant because it's based a priori on information theory, not on number theory. Any number theory-based encryption, including shortest integer test, which is also what is also referred to as N-true type encryption, it was recently cracked in only 53 hours on a standard computer. What we don't want is to be stuck with an encryption that everyone can believe is quantum resistant, but is actually still breakable to state actors. Blockchain, there's no industry association advocating for this, so I'm telling you about this now. Look it up. The key to sovereign future is going to be quantum-resistant NFTs. All our memories, all our experiences will be NFT'd eventually. And you will decide if you ever want to sell it or if you don't, if you really want to pass it on to your children or maybe your own next substrate. So we provide quantum-resistant protection, VPN. We encrypt the data with quantum-resistant encryption, then build the NFT. You control all of it's decentralized. Then you could take it to a data exchange if you decide you want to monetize. It's about claim your data, protect it, control it, and then you decide if you want to monetize it. You may never want to monetize it. But you should have that right because it is your intangible personal property. We do that with one-time pad encryption. We provide end-to-end encryption messages, and network fees also go to the node validators. The future of data sovereignty is going to be proof of self. Crown Sterling wants to be the platform that allows you to build your technologies either on our platform or in combination with our platform, both in terms of encryption and compression and quantum VPN technology. We want to be there to help the world maintain its own individual data sovereignty for a much better future. Thank you very much.
I'm so fascinated by that transition that we could make in this Web3 space, right? You start with proof of work, and just by nomenclature alone, work, effort, right? And next you move to proof of stake, putting something and creating passive yields off of it. So less work, but still, you know, something outside the self. And to enter into a new technology where it says proof of self, how intriguing. What does that mean? What does that look like? Well, Mr. Grant showed us what it could look like, didn't he? So, stable coins, right? I don't know if you've seen the news, but there's been news about stable coins. And maybe that news has affected how you think about stable coins or what stable coins could mean for the future of crypto. But the gentleman who's going to come to the stage next was speaking on was one of the opening ceremony keynotes, and he is concerned about what inflation is doing to your money. The fact that you're currently losing value in fiat currency, number by number, day by day, is just not okay. So my next guest, through Laguna, is offering solutions where you can say, hey, let me get a coin, let me get something stable so I can protect my assets, so I can protect my future, so I can protect myself from what is happening outside of me. So without further ado, let us introduce to the stage Mr. Stefan Rust.
Thank you, Bianca. Thank you. How's everybody feeling? Come on, we got to get more people in here. Come on, let's make some noise. Anyway. Hey, yeah, no, I'm Stefan Rust. You can see, I think my slides are going to come up pretty soon. But I'm from Laguna, and you can see that on the cap. We adjust and localize. But I'm here to talk about why we need stablecoins, and we need decentralized stablecoins, and why they're so important to us as an ecosystem. When I got into Bitcoin, I got in because of the peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That was a white paper that was drafted by a Satoshi Nakamoto. And when I experienced Bitcoin for the first time, it was using a Skype remittance across the world instantaneously and without any fees. And for me, that was really what got me hooked into crypto and into Bitcoin and to Web3, whatever we call it today. But that's what got me hooked into it. And that's why I feel that value add is something that I have spent my career in Bitcoin, which is since 2012, by the way, is been growing that peer-to-peer electronic cash system. One mistake I made, or I did not see, was the value of stablecoins. It is a user experience value that is underappreciated, and how that has benefited the whole crypto ecosystem is par none. We cannot appreciate that. Who wants to be the person that spent $300 million on a pizza? None of us want to be that person, but we're happy to spend 10 USDT on a pizza. The fact that we need to convert 10,000 BTCs into 10 USDT at that point in time to buy the pizza is something totally we forget about. But the fact that it costs today, at today's value, 300 million is something we don't forget. And so that user experience is purely psychological, but has a significant impact in driving greater adoption. And that's why we need to ensure that these coins still stick around and we continue to experiment. And are my slides coming or not? Or do I have a clicker, or do you, I don't know. They'll work it out. But anyway, and that's sort of why I feel we need to focus on decentralized stablecoins. We've all been through UST, right? We've all been burnt money, or I've been, we've all been impacted. Let's say that's the right word from Terra and Luna and USTs. Okay, thank you. There you go. Sorry? Wrong deck. There you go. That's next deck. There you go. Anyway, while they figure it out, I can just continue to keep you entertained. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so, but for all its flaws, the experiment around UST did move us as a whole community forward. We learned a lot. We shared a lot of the flaws that were identified. And of course, all the naysayers come out when it falls down. And we hear about the negativity that we saw it was going to fall. It was bound to fail. It was algorithmic. But at the time, since 2018 or 19, whenever they founded the project, it had grown and it had reached adoption. And it was reaching adoption at an exponential velocity that the Luna chain and the Luna coin could not keep up with. And that's why they were trying to back that up. And behind it were the institutional investors. So there were not only retail investors involved, there were a lot of institutional or so-called accredited investors involved in that. And so we invited these accredited investors into the Web3 sphere. We wanted more institutions. We wanted them to come in and help us grow this ecosystem. But there is a reason why they're called barbarians at the gate, Shark Tank, Wolf of Wall Street, right? There's a reason why they're there. They look for gaps. They look for opportunities that they can exploit and make significant money in. And that's what they've done. And we found out those flaws, and we as a community need to move forward fast, build faster, and continue to take those learnings into our products as we evolve, and we need to continue to innovate. That's critical and essential for what we're doing. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's not working. So I'm just going to talk here, and I'm going to keep you entertained. Yeah. Yeah, so what do we need to do out of that, and what's important, right? And so if we look at stable coins, and why is stable coin such an important element, right? Anybody read the book Peter Thiel, 1 to 0 or 0 to 1? Yes, there you go. In his book, he talks about technological innovation needing to be 10x, okay, there we go, needs to be, jump this slide, you know, the tattoo. I don't know whether that tattoo's still there. You can get tattoos removed though these days. But this is what we want to avoid. We invited these institutions into our ecosystem. And we now have layers on layers on layers that has been created in order to take a decentralized peer-to-peer electronic cash ecosystem to fit a traditional TradFi world, the system that we've been fighting so hard since 2008 to combat, into and adopting and making available for this new digital asset. Do we want this? I don't know. I didn't sign up to get into crypto and Bitcoin and a peer-to-peer electronic cash system for multiple layers, multiple middlemen, and multiple fees across the way working with all these middlemen. So there's a term, SSDD, and to be honest, I don't think I want to see us in this community to build another SSDD world that we're actually trying to change. I was just at, who was at Palm Beach? Who was at Permissionless? How did you find the event there? It was good? To me, it was more about permission more. So there was a lot about KYC, AML, regulators, how do we avoid scams, how do we protect the retail investor, how do we restrict retail investors to participate in this new wealth creation, etc. And so I actually coined it the permission more. And we had Bankless that was supporting it. And is Bankless actually really trying to make it less banking? If you look at the previous slide that we talked about, I can't see, yeah, that looks to me like a banking infrastructure on a decentralized world, which I think we need to come up with alternatives and innovate faster than the competition can keep up with. But yeah, I talked about the 1 to 0. We need to build a user experience that is 10x better than what is today. You know, taking a Twitter experience and just putting that onto the blockchain is not going to be enough. Taking a Facebook and making that available as a social platform on the blockchain is not going to be enough. The blockchain does not compute fast enough. The tooling is not appropriate for something of that volume, that magnitude, with that many frequent transactions. Yet, we still have a lot to build. And so that is not the 10x. What a stablecoin has done to crypto, that is definitely a 10x. How do we build more UX like we experience on a Web 2 environment in a Web 3 infrastructure to really actually provide a 10x improvement? And that's what we're here all trying to do. NFTs has shown us a great way to do that. The metaverse is a first step in getting us there. We still have a lot of work to do in front of us on the metaverse. But in essence, we need to sort of really work towards that. And why do I believe stablecoins are so important in this journey? You can see on the graph here, you know, I've got the top 5 currencies in the world that we look at, from the Japanese yen, the dollar, the pound, and you know, the euro. And that is a $23 trillion industry, or 21, sorry, depending on the day and depending how much they've printed. But that's a $21 trillion industry. The aggregate of all stable coins on chain, which is, by the way, super transparent. You can go and look online at any point in time. That is only $180 billion. So a tiny magnitude of where and what the full opportunity is. Now, just to take into contrast, Switzerland is, which I'm a citizen of, by the way, has a population of 8 million people. They have a currency called the Swiss franc. That Swiss franc caters to those 8 million people and has a market cap or circulation supply of 850 billion. So it's even bigger and supports a smaller community than all of us in DeFi, yet has a magnitude of 8x bigger than all the stable coins across the DeFi ecosystem. And so at the end of last year, we looked at the DeFi ecosystem, and these numbers are just sort of ballpark figures and they've changed, but in the DeFi world, we at that time had maybe 10 million people in DeFi. We had maybe 500 million people in some owning crypto in some magnitude. That could be as an ETF, that could be on a Coinbase account, that could be in a decentralized wallet, but whatever the form was, they were having some form of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, whatever it is. And that had a magnitude in the DeFi world at the time was 250 billion in terms of total value locked by those 10 million DeFi participants that were locking that in there. Now, in the next 5 years, we have the opportunity, or next 4 years, we have the opportunity to take that total TVL up to $9 trillion. How are we going to do that? One way is we need to grow the base community from 10 million people to 200 million people, 300 million people. How do we do that? What do we need to do? And again, learning on building fluidity, learning on building payment systems, making a capability to use my stablecoin or my crypto. We can already use it as a utility token or a governance token. How do we use it more for purchasing products and real world products outside of the crypto world? Those are all opportunities that we need to build a great user experience for. I mentioned I spent most of my career building out a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. I did that with an amazing network where we actually could do finality and confirm a transaction from a wallet to a point of sale system in fractions of a second. And that was all on layer 1 on chain. And so if we can build that again and get more circulation and more velocity around money, we have a really good opportunity to grow that. And how do we do that together as a community across all the ecosystems that we're all working on? And if I look at that $9 trillion, it's not even the size of the gold market today. Gold market is $10 trillion. We don't even come close in aggregate amongst all of us together to get to that market cap. That's something we should be able to do as a community in the next 3 years. And I believe this is really possible, and we're trying and working really hard to try and make this possible, and also work with you as a community to do that. And one of the things that I think we have a huge opportunity to address is inflation. The governments in the last sort of 2 years have been printing $15–20 trillion of new coins coming into the market. Now they're doing quantitative tightening, so they're trying to restrain it, buy back some of that money, take it off the market. But either way, that means that our traditional dollar values has been declining. And our purchasing power, all of us have experienced how empty that shopping cart feels, when you leave the supermarket or when you're leaving the grocery store. How do we make sure that that doesn't happen and we continue to innovate in the stablecoin environment? There's a number of projects taking place that are really trying to create this flat coin. Has anybody heard the term flat coin? So the flat coin is a coin that is not depreciating and going down and pegged to a fiat currency, but it's pegged to a basket of consumer items that we spend on a day-to-day basis throughout the years. And how do we couple and calculate what that is? That is basically inflation. How is the price of that basket evolving over time? And what are we doing to protect that purchasing power, and how do we peg a coin to that basket? All the things that matter to us on a day-to-day basis. You've got great projects like Frax, Sperax, Volt, all innovating around that and trying to create a new opportunity. You've got Nuon that's up there that's just going through audits, trying to do that as well. And so we're going to see continuous innovation. And the brilliance around a flat coin is it's pegged to your everyday real world items that you buy when you go to the supermarket. You pay rent, the utility bill you pay. Is there a way that because it's pegged to that, I know that that coin can always buy me that basket, and that's going to make sure it's not deflating. And so that becomes more important to both the grocer, to the retailer, the restaurant owner, the utility manufacturer, the utility provider, sorry. And then they will then accept that coin. And that's what we want to see. And that is going to help us hold the representatives that we vote into office to define policies and take and try to innovate and create opportunities for us. We need to hold them accountable. These professional politicians that are up there, how do we hold them accountable and how do we make them, it's anyway, super funny, not funny really, but if you do analogies to crypto and you look what's going on in the government at the moment, yesterday there was an announcement, or the day before yesterday, I think the SEC just announced that they're going after Binance, or they're looking into Binance and looking into some of the activities that Binance, so they're just researching. And they made that announcement. The same day, you have Senator Loomis coming out and saying, we're going to put forward a proposal that's going to make the SEC obsolete. And we're going to give all the coins that have been created, they're going to be utility tokens, and they're going to be under the CFTC. So there's a fork beginning to happen, even in the government. So the CFTC is going one angle, and the SEC is going another angle, and they're disputing, they're debating. Where does that go? Where does that leave crypto? That leaves a huge opportunity, not only in market opportunity, in market size and revenue, but it leaves an opportunity for us to really innovate and move fast. We in crypto land have always moved faster than in any other industry. We've always worked really hard. We work 7 days a week, 24/7. Everybody on here is already on their Telegram. They've answered 15 messages while I'm talking here. They're on their computers there, working, sending emails, doing spreadsheets, whatever you're doing. We're all contributing and continuously being productive. That speed, and with a level of competitiveness that we all have, we need to bring that to market in a safe framework and create new money that will allow us all to make sure that we create an inflation-protected ecosystem that I'd love for you to be a part of. Thank you for your time. My name's Stefan Roost. I'm a part of Laguna, and look to see you at our booth at number 3 if you have any questions. Thank you all very much.
I love that. Showing the true inflation. Well, we are on to our intermission period, folks. If you haven't followed the Decentral Twitter, make sure you do so. It is DCentral CON, Instagram the same name. If you didn't know it, we have food trucks on this level out at the courtyard to the left, my left. Thank you so much for joining us on main stage. I will see you back here at 1:30 early. It's actually 1:40, but you know what? I like a little early. Have a good rest of your day. Make sure you enjoy the booths, and I will see you soon.